Have you ever come across the assertion that black people played a pivotal role in building the United States of America? Perhaps you've heard it in passing, and like many, you may not have fully grasped the truth behind this statement. Well, the fact is, this claim is indeed accurate. Black people were instrumental in constructing the most iconic government buildings that define the United States. One might ponder whether this includes the famed U.S. Capitol or the White House. The narrative surrounding this contribution deserves a closer examination to separate fact from the subtle alterations made in the pages of history. Welcome to a new episode of Black Culture Diary, a platform where we delve into the lesser-known facets of Black history, culture, arts, and lost civilizations. Our mission is to delve deep into history, to uncover and share the vibrant tapestry of Black culture and history that has often been concealed beneath the surface. In this episode, we embark on a journey to uncover the untold story of how Black people played an integral role in constructing the White House and the conditions under which they labored. So, let's dive right in. Soon after the United States gained independence, the ambitious endeavor of constructing government buildings and forging a national legacy began. Even before independence, Black individuals had made significant contributions to the nation's fight for freedom. However, post-independence, the focus shifted to nation building, a task of utmost importance. Given the prevailing circumstances of slavery, Black slaves became the workforce of choice for this monumental undertaking. However, this isn't as straightforward as it may seem. Instead of enabling Black individuals to contribute to the state-building process, they were compelled into constructing government edifices as a workforce, deprived of any say in the nation's affairs. During George Washington's presidency, the D.C. commissioners were granted the authority to oversee the construction of buildings in the newly planned capital, Washington, D.C. The construction of the White House commenced, and between 1792 and 1800, it took shape. At the time, slavery was not only legal but also commonplace in the United States. Many affluent white families owned enslaved individuals, utilizing them as a source of inexpensive labor. The federal government was no exception to this practice, with both George Washington and his successor, John Adams, being slave owners. Enslaved individuals were put to work on the White House construction project. Originally, the D.C. commissioners had contemplated importing labor from Europe to meet their workforce requirements. However, this plan proved unfeasible, leading them to turn to African Americans, both enslaved and free, as the primary source of labor for constructing the White House. While it may be surprising to some, enslaved and free Black workers, alongside a handful of white laborists, played a crucial role in the construction of the White House and other early federal buildings. Unfortunately, this significant contribution has largely been overlooked by history. In fact, First Lady Michelle Obama drew attention to this often ignored fact in her speech at the Democratic National Convention in July 2016 when she mentioned enslaved individuals building the White House. Her statement was met with skepticism by some, but it was entirely accurate. The new federal city of Washington was established on land surrounded by Maryland and Virginia, states that heavily relied on enslaved labor. The city itself was built on farmlands and forests, necessitating the clearing of countless trees and the leveling of hills to lay the foundation for the new government buildings. As construction of these iconic structures began, vast quantities of stone had to be transported to the sites. It was at this juncture that African Americans, both enslaved and free, stepped in to perform the bulk of the labor-intensive work. Despite this little-known fact, enslaved and free Black labor, complemented by a few white workers, played a significant role in constructing the White House and other federal buildings. Their vital contributions have often been obscured in history. It's important to recognize that at that time, the practice of slavery was widely accepted, making the use of enslaved labor for constructing symbols of freedom, such as the White House and the U.S. Capitol, a matter of course. So, what were the specific roles that Black slaves undertook during the initial stages of constructing Washington, D.C. and the White House? Skilled axemen were essential for land clearance and tree felling, demanding precision to create the intricate network of streets and avenues laid out in the city's design. Enslaved workers, particularly those from neighboring Maryland, were already experienced in land clearing due to their work on nearby estates. Clearing the land was essential, given the city's location on previously undeveloped farmland. The transportation of timber and stone from Virginia to the construction site was another pivotal task, and it was often black enslaved laborers who bore the brunt of the heavy lifting, laboring tirelessly and sometimes miles away from the construction site. Materials were hauled on cumbersome wagons, a task that required skilled workers. Enslaved laborers likely played a critical role in ensuring the safe transportation of these materials. As the building structures began to take form, many carpenters were needed for framing and finishing. Temporary sawmills were set up near the construction sites, and enslaved workers were responsible for sawing the vast quantities of lumber required for the work. This was demanding and perilous work, but enslaved individuals were no strangers to physically taxing labor. Their lives had been marked by such labor-intensive tasks while toiling on vast estates where they were forced into physically demanding roles. Once the construction of the buildings was complete, the enslaved workers returned to their respective owners and the estates they had come from. This arrangement was not unusual for the time. Early presidents, many of whom were slaveholders, considered this practice routine. Enslaved workers would often be hired out to work on construction sites or in factories, returning to their owners upon the completion of the work. They might have worked for a single year or a few years before rejoining the enslaved populations on Maryland's estates. In 1814, when both the White House and the U.S. Capitol were burned down during the War of 1812, they had to be rebuilt. Enslaved workers were once again employed for this significant construction phase. It's a challenging task to determine the exact number of enslaved workers involved in constructing these iconic buildings. Nevertheless, historical records affirm their crucial role, albeit one that remained largely concealed for many years. Despite the existence of these records, the significant contribution of enslaved black laborers has been marginalized. So, how did the federal government come to possess black slaves for these monumental construction projects? Historical records reveal that the enslaved individuals who played a crucial role in building the White House and the U.S. Capitol mostly came from the neighboring state of Maryland. In the region surrounding Washington, D.C., numerous large estates heavily relied on enslaved labor. Therefore, landowners found it relatively easy to hire out their enslaved individuals for work on the construction of the new federal city. In some counties of southern Maryland, the enslaved population even outnumbered the free population. The D.C. commissioners, tasked with building the city, secured the labor of around 100 enslaved individuals through established connections. One of these commissioners, Daniel Carroll, hailed from a politically influential family in Maryland. It's conceivable that he reached out to slave owners with family connections to hire their enslaved workers. The discrimination and historical omission of black people's contributions to shaping the United States raise important questions. Why have these contributions not been recognized and acknowledged? What if black people and enslaved individuals had refused to participate in constructing the U.S.? Would the course of U.S. history be markedly different today, or would the United States even exist as we know it? In conclusion, the story of how black people, both enslaved and free, were instrumental in constructing the White House and other iconic government buildings reveals a hidden facet of American history. Their labor, often underappreciated and obscured, played an indispensable role in shaping the nation. Recognizing and acknowledging this contribution is not only a matter of historical accuracy, but also an important step toward understanding the complex tapestry of American history, one that encompasses the struggles, resilience, and contributions of diverse communities. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more thought-provoking content on Black culture, history, civilization, and the evidence that underscores Black excellence. Until the next video.